Commander Zaxthel stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. 300 years of war had taught him everything about conquest. He had crushed 17 different worlds for the hegemony. Some fought back with energy weapons. Others tried to hide behind force fields. All of them fell in the end. This new world would be no different. The planet was called Earth by its people. The hegemony scouts had already done their work. They brought back reports that made Zaxthel smile with his razor-sharp teeth. The humans were weak. They used simple machines that burned fuel to fly. Their weapons shot small metal pieces instead of energy beams. They could not even travel between stars without help. Best of all, they fought each other constantly. The planet was split into hundreds of different groups that could not agree on anything. While the hegemony built a great empire across the galaxy, these humans wasted their time fighting over pieces of dirt and old arguments. Zaxthel's thick, armored skin tingled with excitement. His people, the Vorthak, were made for war. Their bodies were stronger than steel. Their minds were faster than computers. They could see in the dark and hear sounds that would be silent to other species. Every Vorthak was born to be a perfect soldier. The humans had none of these gifts. They were small and soft. Their bones broke easily. They needed special suits just to survive in space. How could such weak creatures hope to fight the mighty hegemony? "Sir," called out his second in command, "we are receiving messages from the planet." "What do they say?" Zaxthel asked, though he already knew the answer. Every species tried to talk their way out of defeat. It never worked. They are asking us to identify ourselves. They want to know why we are here. Zaxthel laughed, a deep sound that echoed through the bridge. "Tell them we are here to add their world to the hegemony. They can surrender now and be treated fairly, or they can fight and be destroyed completely." The communication officer sent the message. Within minutes, they had a reply. "They refuse to surrender, sir. They say they will defend their world." This was exactly what Zaxthel expected. Every species said the same thing at first. They always changed their minds when the real fighting started. The hegemony had perfected the art of war over thousands of years. They knew exactly how to break an enemy's will to fight. "Very well," Zaxthel said. "Begin standard invasion protocol. Send the scout ships to map their defenses. I want to know where their weapons are before we begin the real attack." The first wave of hegemony ships moved toward Earth. These were small, fast vessels designed to gather information without being detected. They had done this same job on dozens of other worlds. The routine was always the same, but something strange happened as the scout ships approached the planet. Instead of hiding or running away, the humans did something unexpected. They launched hundreds of their primitive flying machines straight at the hegemony scouts. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the humans are attacking our advanced ships." Zaxthel moved closer to the screen. The human aircraft were tiny compared to hegemony vessels. They looked like insects trying to fight eagles. "Are they causing any damage?" "No, sir, but they are not retreating either. They keep coming even when we destroy them." This was unusual. Most species pulled back their forces when they realized how outmatched they were. The humans seemed to be throwing their pilots away for no reason. It was wasteful and stupid. "Perhaps they are testing our weapons," Zaxthel said. "Let them waste their resources. We will crush whatever is left." But the human attacks continued for hours. Wave after wave of their aircraft crashed into the hegemony scouts. The aliens destroyed hundreds of human machines, but more kept coming. Even stranger, the humans began using different tactics with each attack. They tried new formations, different weapons, and unexpected approaches. "They are learning," the tactical officer said with surprise. "Each attack is different from the last one." Zaxthel frowned. Learning during battle was not common among primitive species. Usually they stuck to one strategy until it failed completely. These humans seemed to be adapting in real time. "It does not matter," he said firmly. "Clever insects are still just insects. Order the main fleet to advance. We will end this quickly." The massive hegemony warships moved toward Earth like a dark cloud. Each ship was larger than a human city and carried enough firepower to level continents. The humans had nothing that could match such power. As the fleet approached, something else unexpected happened. The humans did not try to meet them in space. Instead, they retreated to their planet and began broadcasting signals in all directions. "What are they doing?" Zachthel demanded. "Unknown, sir." The signals appear to be some kind of communication network. They are talking to each other across their entire planet. Zachthel had seen this before. When facing impossible odds, some species tried to coordinate their surrender. They would choose representatives to negotiate terms. It was a sensible response to hopeless circumstances. "Prepare to receive their surrender offer," he ordered, but no surrender came. Instead, the humans began doing something that made no sense at all. They started launching more of their primitive rockets, but these were not weapons. They were carrying supplies and people to various points around their planet. "They are moving resources," the intelligence officer reported. "It looks like they are preparing for a long siege." A long siege? Zachthel could not understand this thinking. The humans had no way to win such a conflict. The hegemony could simply bombard their planet from orbit until nothing was left alive. Why would they choose such a painful defeat instead of quick surrender? "Perhaps they do not understand what they are facing," he said. "Open a communication channel to their leaders. I will explain their situation personally." The connection was established quickly. A human face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral Jake Morrison, based on the uniform markings. The human looked tired but determined. "I am Commander Zachthel of the Hegemony Fleet," he began. "You cannot win this war. Your weapons are too weak and your technology is too primitive. Surrender now, and your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire." Morrison looked directly at him. "We've seen what happens to species that surrender to you." "Thanks, but we'll pass." "Then you choose extinction," Zachthel replied. "I have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. You have no idea what real war looks like." The human smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but you're about to find out what human war looks like." The transmission ended. Zachthel stared at the blank screen for a moment. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever spoken to him with such confidence while facing certain defeat. The humans either did not understand their situation or they knew something he did not. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Target their military installations first. Once their organized forces are destroyed, they will see reason." The great guns of the Hegemony Fleet opened fire. Beams of pure energy lanced down from space, striking targets across the human world. Bases were vaporized, ships were destroyed, and entire military complexes disappeared in flashes of light. But even as their forces were being destroyed, the humans did not stop fighting. They scattered like seeds in the wind, breaking up into smaller groups that were harder to target. They abandoned their large bases and moved to hidden locations. Most surprisingly, they began using weapons and tactics that the hegemony scanners had never detected before. As the bombardment continued, Zachthel realized that something was very wrong. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had ever faced. They were not trying to protect fixed positions or maintain supply lines. Instead, they seemed to be turning their entire planet into a weapon. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, Commander Zachthel began to feel something he had never experienced before. It was a small, cold feeling in the center of his armored chest. He did not recognize it at first, but eventually he understood what it was. It was doubt. The next day brought more confusion for Commander Zachthel. His tactical display showed dozens of new contacts around Earth, but they were not warships. They were civilian satellites, commercial space stations, and even old pieces of space junk. Yet somehow these harmless objects were moving in patterns that made no sense. "Sir," reported his weapons officer, "the humans are repositioning their orbital debris. It appears to be random movement." Zachthel studied the display carefully. Random movement was inefficient and wasteful. No military commander would order such chaos unless there was a hidden purpose. "Continue monitoring. Focus our scans on their remaining military forces. But finding human military forces proved harder than expected. The organized armies that had existed before the bombardment seemed to have vanished. In their place were thousands of small groups scattered across the planet. Some had military equipment, others carried civilian tools, and many appeared to be ordinary citizens. They have abandoned proper military structure, observed the intelligence officer. There is no clear command hierarchy that we can target. This was deeply troubling. The hegemony standard strategy relied on destroying enemy leadership to break their will to fight. Without clear targets, the battle became much more complicated. Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on communication screens across Earth, but he was not speaking from a military base. He stood in what looked like an ordinary city, surrounded by people who were clearly not soldiers. "People of Earth," Morrison said, "the enemy expects us to fight like they do. They want us to line up our armies so they can destroy them easily. We will not give them what they want." Behind Morrison, Zachthel could see humans working frantically on strange projects. Children sat at computers next to military officers. Scientists worked alongside mechanics. It was complete chaos, yet everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing. "Instead," Morrison continued, "we will fight like humans. We will use every tool, every person, and every idea available to us. This is not just a military war, this is a human war." The transmission ended, but within hours, Zachthel began to see what Morrison meant. Reports flooded in from across the battle zone that made little sense to his trained military mind. A group of humans had somehow hacked into hegemony communication networks using primitive computers. The lead hacker was Alex Chun, a young man who worked with video games before the war. Chun had no military training, yet he managed to disrupt alien navigation systems using techniques that no hegemony programmer had ever seen. "How is this possible?" Zachthel demanded. "Our communication systems are protected by quantum encryption?" "Unknown, sir," replied the technical officer. "The human appears to be using some kind of virus that adapts itself. It learns our defenses and finds new ways around them." Meanwhile, other humans were doing equally impossible things. Dr. Katie Williams, a scientist who studied sea creatures, discovered that Earth's magnetic field could interfere with hegemony sensors. She worked with amateur radio operators to create interference patterns that made hegemony ships temporarily blind. Marine Colonel Ben Taylor took a group of miners and turned them into a strike force. They used mining explosives and drilling equipment to attack hegemony ground forces. The weapons were crude, but they worked in ways that alien armor was not designed to handle. Most disturbing of all was how quickly the humans shared information. Every new discovery, every successful tactic, every piece of useful intelligence spread across their planet in minutes. They used their primitive internet to coordinate resistance activities in real time. "They are learning faster than we can adapt," reported the tactical officer. "Every strategy we implement is countered within hours." Zachthel watched a group of human children on his monitors. They were playing what appeared to be games on their computers, but the games showed detailed maps of hegemony ship movements. The children were actually helping to track alien forces and predict their actions. "Are these younglings part of their military?" he asked. "No, sir. They appear to be civilians, but they are providing tactical information to human forces." This violated every rule of civilized warfare. Military operations should be conducted by trained soldiers, not by children playing games. Yet the information these young humans provided was surprisingly accurate. General Lisa Hayes coordinated much of the resistance from a hidden location. She did not command from a fortress or a heavily protected bunker. Instead, she moved constantly, using civilian vehicles and abandoned buildings to stay ahead of hegemony forces. Hayes had revolutionized human military doctrine in just a few days. She organized mixed teams of soldiers, scientists, and civilians. Each team operated independently but shared information with all the others. When one team discovered something useful, every team knew about it immediately. Traditional command structure is too slow, Hayes explained in an intercepted communication. We need every human thinking and acting like a soldier. Military rank means nothing if good ideas come from civilians. Zachthel found this approach deeply disturbing. Military hierarchy existed for good reasons. It prevented chaos and ensured that orders were followed precisely. The human system seemed designed to create confusion, yet somehow it worked. The breakthrough moment came when pilot Maria Rodriguez made a decision that changed everything. Her fighter aircraft was severely damaged during an attack on a hegemony command ship. Instead of retreating to safety, Rodriguez aimed her crippled plane directly at the alien vessel. "This is for Earth," she said over the radio, then crashed her fighter into the command ship's bridge. The explosion destroyed both the human aircraft and the alien command center. Rodriguez died instantly, but her sacrifice allowed a convoy of human refugees to escape safely. More importantly, her action inspired thousands of other humans to make similar sacrifices. Zachthel had seen soldiers die bravely before, but this was different. Rodriguez was not following orders or trying to win glory. She made a personal choice to save people she had never met. Her death was not commanded by a superior officer or required by military duty. She simply decided that other lives were more important than her own. Within hours, similar acts of sacrifice occurred across the planet. Humans began using their own vehicles as weapons, turning civilian equipment into military tools and risking their lives for complete strangers. They did not do these things because they were ordered to. They did them because they chose to. "Sir," the communication officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human resistance." General Hayes appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. "Commander Zachthel, I have a message for you. We know you've conquered many worlds before ours. Those species probably fought you using traditional military tactics. They used proper armies with clear command structures. They followed the rules of civilized warfare." Hayes paused, then continued. "We are not going to fight you that way. We are going to fight you like humans. That means every person on this planet is now a soldier. Every tool is now a weapon. Every building is now a fortress. You may have superior technology, but you have never faced anything like human determination." The transmission ended, leaving Zachthel staring at a blank screen. In 3 centuries of warfare, no enemy had ever spoken to him with such confidence while being so clearly outmatched. The humans had inferior weapons, no energy shields, and primitive technology. By every measure of military strength, they should have surrendered already, yet they continued to fight with a ferocity that made no logical sense. They turned disadvantages into advantages, used civilian resources as military assets, and coordinated their resistance in ways that seemed impossible. For the first time in his long career, Commander Zachthel began to wonder if he truly understood what war was. These humans were showing him something he had never seen before. They were not just fighting to avoid defeat. They were fighting to protect something more important than victory itself. They were fighting for each other. 2 weeks into the war, Commander Zachthel faced something he had never experienced before. His forces were losing ground to an enemy that should have been crushed on the first day. The tactical reports grew worse with each passing hour. "Sir," his intelligence officer said nervously, "the humans have captured one of our supply ships." Zachthel turned sharply. "How is that possible? Our ships have energy shields and plasma weapons. The humans only have primitive projectiles." "They used a mining vessel, sir." Captain Ben Taylor led the attack. They approached slowly, pretending to be space debris. When they got close enough, they used magnetic grapples to attach themselves to our hull. The officer brought up a recording. On the main screen, Zachthel watched in disbelief as human miners used industrial cutting tools to break through hegemony armor. They wore simple spacesuits and carried basic equipment, yet they moved with the precision of trained soldiers. "Once inside," the officer continued, "they disabled our crew using some kind of gas weapon. It appears to be a modified fire extinguisher system from their mining ship." Zachthel stared at the screen. "They used fire extinguishers as weapons?" "Yes, sir. The chemical compound was not designed to harm our species. but it made our soldiers unconscious long enough for the humans to take control of the ship. This was beyond belief. The humans had turned safety equipment into military weapons. They used civilian tools to defeat trained hegemony warriors. It violated every principle of proper warfare. What did they do with the ship? Zachfel asked, though he suspected the answer would be equally disturbing. They are studying our technology, sir. Our sensors show them taking apart our weapons and communication systems. They appear to be learning how everything works. Within days, the stolen technology began appearing in human weapons. They did not simply copy hegemony designs. Instead, they combined alien technology with their own ideas to create something entirely new. Amy Foster, a young engineering officer, led the team that reverse-engineered the captured energy weapons. She had no training in alien technology, yet she managed to understand complex systems in just a few days. More importantly, she found ways to improve them. The alien weapons are powerful but inflexible, Foster explained to her team. They are designed to work in one specific way. We can make them better by adding human modifications. The modified weapons were smaller and lighter than the originals. They could be powered by human electrical systems and repaired using Earth materials. Most disturbing of all, they were more effective than the original hegemony versions. How are they improving our technology? Zachfel demanded. We have been perfecting these weapons for thousands of years. Unknown, sir, replied the technical officer. They appear to approach engineering problems differently than we do. Where we focus on perfection and standardization, they focus on adaptation and flexibility. The humans began deploying their modified weapons across the planet. Energy shields appeared around human positions, but they were not the standard hegemony designs. The human shields were mobile, adaptive, and could be powered by anything from solar panels to car batteries. Zachfel ordered increased attacks to overwhelm the new defenses, but the humans had learned to fight differently. They no longer tried to hold fixed positions. Instead, they moved constantly, striking at hegemony forces and then disappearing before counterattacks could be organized. Lieutenant Amy Foster herself led one of the most daring raids of the war. Using captured hegemony technology, she and her team infiltrated the flagship of the invasion fleet. They did not try to destroy the ship or capture it. Instead, they planted devices that would allow them to monitor hegemony communications. Sir, the security officer reported, we have detected unauthorized access to our computer networks. Zachfel felt his armored skin grow cold. Internal access? Yes, sir. The humans have somehow gained access to our tactical planning systems. They appear to know about our operations before we execute them. This was impossible. Hegemony computer security was designed to prevent exactly this kind of intrusion. Yet somehow, a primitive species with basic technology had penetrated their most protected systems. The truth was even worse than Zachfel imagined. Foster's team had not just gained access to the computers. They had installed monitoring software that learned from every hegemony communication. The humans were now able to predict alien movements and prepare counter-strategies in advance. They are inside our decision-making process, the intelligence officer explained. Every order we give, every plan we make, they know about it within minutes. General Lisa Hayes used this information to coordinate human resistance with deadly efficiency. She positioned forces exactly where they would do the most damage and avoided areas where hegemony strength was concentrated. The humans began winning battles before they were even fought. Ryan Brooks, a former military strategist, developed new tactics based on the stolen intelligence. He created a system where human forces could respond to hegemony movements faster than the aliens could adapt to changing conditions. We know what they are going to do before they do it, Brooks explained to his commanders. That gives us the advantage even though their weapons are better than ours. The psychological effect on hegemony forces was devastating. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds began to doubt their abilities. They were being outfought by a species they considered primitive, using tactics that made no logical sense. Sir, the morale officer reported, Our troops are requesting reinforcements. They say the humans fight like they know the future. Zaxel understood the feeling. Every strategy he implemented was countered almost immediately. Every trap he set was avoided. Every advantage he tried to exploit somehow turned into a human victory. The turning point came when Dr. Sarah Mitchell made a discovery that changed the entire war. She was a human scientist who studied computer systems. Using the captured alien technology, she found a way to disrupt hegemony weapons at the source. Their energy weapons all use the same frequency, Mitchell explained to General Hayes. If we can generate interference at that frequency, we can disable their weapons over a large area. Within hours, human engineers had built devices that could neutralize hegemony weapons. The devices were simple, using modified radio equipment and power generators. They were not advanced technology, but they worked perfectly. The first test occurred during a major hegemony assault on a human city. As alien forces approached, the interference devices activated. Suddenly, the most advanced weapons in the galaxy stopped working. Hegemony soldiers found themselves carrying useless equipment, while humans attacked with their primitive but functional weapons. Sir, the weapons officer reported, our energy systems are being disrupted across the entire battle zone. We cannot fire our main weapons. Zaxel watched his supposedly superior forces retreat in confusion. The humans pressed their advantage, using captured alien vehicles and their own modified weapons to drive off the invasion force. How are they doing this? Zaxel asked, though he no longer expected answers that made sense. They have found a weakness in our technology that we did not know existed, the technical officer explained. Our weapons are too standardized. They all share the same vulnerabilities. For the first time in 3 centuries, Commander Zaxel ordered a full retreat. His forces pulled back to orbit while he tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans had not just defeated his army. They had made his most advanced technology useless. Sir, his second-in-command said quietly, perhaps we should request additional fleets from the hegemony. Zaxel considered this option. More ships, and more soldiers might overwhelm the human defenses. But he was no longer certain that superior numbers would be enough. The humans had shown they could turn any advantage against itself. No, he said finally. I need to understand what we are really fighting before we commit more forces. For the first time in his long career, Zaxel admitted that he did not understand his enemy. These humans fought with a creativity and adaptability that seemed impossible. They learned faster than any species he had ever encountered and turned their weaknesses into strengths. Most disturbing of all, they appeared to be getting stronger with each battle. Commander Zaxel sat alone in his command chamber, studying captured human data files. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, he was trying to understand his enemy instead of simply destroying them. What he found disturbed him more than any defeat on the battlefield. The human military records went back thousands of years. Every war, every battle, every conflict was documented in detail. Zaxel began reading about human history, expecting to find simple tales of primitive violence. Instead, he discovered something far more complex. The humans had been fighting constantly throughout their entire history, but they never stopped learning. Each war taught them new lessons. Every defeat led to better strategies. They had turned warfare itself into a learning process. Colonel Ryan Brooks had studied ancient human battles and applied those lessons to fighting the hegemony. He learned from a human general named Sun Tzu who lived thousands of years ago. Sun Tzu wrote that the best victory was winning without fighting, and that knowing your enemy was more important than having better weapons. Know yourself and know your enemy, Brooks had quoted in one of his reports. In 100 battles, you will never be defeated. Zaxel found this idea strange. The hegemony focused on building better weapons and stronger soldiers. They never spent much time studying their enemies because superior force always won in the end. But the humans seemed to believe that understanding was more powerful than technology. He read about Commander Sarah Mitchell, who had revolutionized human tactics by combining military strategy with civilian expertise. She organized teams where Soldiers worked directly with scientists, engineers, and even artists. Each group brought different ways of thinking to solve military problems. War is not just about fighting, Mitchell had written. It is about solving problems under extreme pressure. The more different minds we bring to each problem, the better our solutions will be. This approach was completely foreign to hegemony, thinking military operations should be conducted by trained soldiers following established procedures. Mixing civilians with military personnel created chaos and confusion. Yet somehow, the human system produced better results than traditional methods. The more Zachthel read, the more he realized that the hegemony had been fighting the same war for thousands of years. They used the same strategies, the same weapons, and the same tactics against every enemy. It worked because most species fought in predictable ways, but humans were different. They studied every enemy and adapted their approach accordingly. They treated each war as a unique puzzle that required a custom solution. Instead of relying on standard procedures, they invented new methods for each situation. A communication request interrupted his studies. General Lisa Hayes appeared on his screen. But this time she was not making demands or threats. She looked tired and sad. "Commander Zachthel," she said, "I think it is time we talked honestly about what is happening here." Zachthel was surprised by her tone. "You wish to surrender?" "No," Hayes replied. "I want to understand why you are doing this. We have studied your history too. The hegemony has conquered dozens of worlds. What happens to the people who live there?" This was an unusual question. Most enemies focused on military matters, not on the fate of conquered populations. "They become part of the empire," Zachthel answered. "They serve the hegemony and contribute to its growth. As slaves," Hayes said quietly. "As subjects," Zachthel corrected, "they are protected and provided for. In return, they work for the greater good of the empire." Hayes was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. "That is why we will never surrender. We would rather die free than live as slaves." The transmission ended, leaving Zachthel confused. Freedom was not worth dying for. Security and order were more important than individual liberty. Why would an entire species choose destruction over the safety of submission? He found the answer in more human records. Throughout their history, humans had consistently chosen freedom over safety. They fought against oppression even when they had no chance of winning. They valued independence more than life itself. The American Revolution, the French Resistance, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Zachthel. Read about dozens of conflicts where humans fought hopeless battles against superior enemies. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost, but they never stopped fighting for their freedom. Liberty or death was a phrase that appeared repeatedly in human history. To them, these were not just words. They were a fundamental principle worth any sacrifice. Kevin Wright, a human historian turned military advisor, had explained this concept to his commanders. Our ancestors fought against impossible odds because they believed some things were more important than survival. That same spirit lives in every human today. Zachthel began to understand why the humans fought so fiercely. They were not just defending their planet. They were defending their right to choose their own destiny. The hegemony offered them safety in exchange for freedom. But humans considered that trade unacceptable. This realization troubled him deeply. For the first time, he began to question the rightness of the hegemony's mission. Was conquest really bringing peace to the galaxy, or was it simply replacing one form of war with another? His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent report from his intelligence officer. "Sir, we have intercepted human communications discussing a major operation. They appear to be planning an attack on the hegemony homeworld itself." This was impossible. The humans barely had functioning spacecraft. How could they threaten a world that was protected by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy? "They are working with resistance groups on worlds we have already conquered," the officer explained. "It appears that many of our subject populations are not as loyal as we believed." Zachthel felt a chill run through his armored body. If the humans could inspire rebellion in conquered territories, the entire hegemony empire could collapse. Their approach to warfare was not just about winning battles. It was about spreading ideas that undermined the very foundation of hegemony power. Amanda Foster, the human engineering officer, had been secretly communicating with technical personnel on other worlds. She shared human innovations and taught others how to modify hegemony technology. More importantly, she spread the idea that resistance was possible. Every species the hegemony conquered is still alive, Foster had written in one message. They remember what freedom was like. All they need is proof that the Empire can be defeated. The humans were not just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for every world the hegemony had ever conquered. They wanted to free the entire galaxy from imperial control. Dr. Rachel Stone, a human psychologist, had studied hegemony society and found its weakness. The Empire depended on the belief that resistance was hopeless. Once people saw that the hegemony could be defeated, that belief would crumble. Fear is their greatest weapon, Stone had explained. Not their energy cannons or their warships, but the fear that fighting back is impossible. Once that fear is gone, their power disappears. Zaxthel realized that the humans had turned his greatest strength into his greatest weakness. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was precisely what made them vulnerable. Every world they had conquered was now a potential enemy waiting for a chance to rebel. The communication system chimed again. This time it was Admiral Jake Morrison. "Commander," Morrison said, "I have a proposition for you. We know about the hegemony's other wars, the species you have enslaved, the worlds you have conquered. We also know that many of your own soldiers are beginning to have doubts about this war." Morrison paused, then continued. "You can continue this war and watch your empire fall apart, or you can help us build something better. A galaxy where different species work together instead of conquering each other." "You are asking me to betray my own people," Zaxthel said. "No," Morrison replied. "I am asking you to save them. The hegemony is not sustainable. Eventually you will face an enemy you cannot defeat, or your conquered worlds will rebel all at once. Either way, your empire will fall. The only question is whether it falls in war or transforms into something peaceful." The transmission ended, leaving Zaxthel alone with thoughts that challenged everything he had believed about war, conquest, and the nature of power itself. For 3 centuries, he had served the hegemony without question. Now, for the first time, he wondered if the humans might be right about more than just military tactics. Perhaps it was time to learn from them about peace as well as war. The order came directly from the hegemony high command. Commander Zaxthel stared at the message on his screen, feeling something cold and heavy settle in his chest. "Planet cracker weapons are authorized for immediate use against Earth." The message read, "Total sterilization is approved. No human survivors permitted." Zaxthel had seen these weapons used before. They could tear a planet apart from the inside, turning solid rock into glowing debris. Every living thing would die instantly. The humans would never know what hit them. For 3 centuries he had followed such orders without question. The hegemony's will was absolute. Resistance was futile. Conquest brought peace to the galaxy. But now he hesitated. "Sir," his weapons. Officer said, "Shall I prepare the planet cracker missiles?" Zaxthel looked at the tactical display showing Earth. Billions of humans lived on that small blue world. They were not soldiers or rebels or criminals. Most of them were simply ordinary people trying to live their lives. Soon all of them would be dead. "Sir," the officer repeated. "Stand by," Zaxthel said quietly. He opened a private communication. "Channel to General Lisa Hayes on Earth." She appeared on his screen, looking exhausted but still determined. "Commander," she said, "I know why you are calling. Your people have decided to destroy our world." "How did you know?" "We have been monitoring your communications for weeks. We knew this moment would come eventually." Zaxthel was surprised by her calm tone. "You do not seem afraid," Hayes smiled sadly. "I am terrified. But being afraid and giving up are 2 different things. Our people are prepared to die fighting rather than live as slaves. There is another option, Zachthel said slowly. I could provide you with information about hegemony fleet positions and weapon systems. Your people might be able to use that information to strike first. Hayes stared at him in shock. You are offering to help us? I am offering to prevent genocide, Zachthel replied. The humans have shown me things I never understood about war and freedom. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn those lessons. Within hours, Zachthel transmitted detailed intelligence about hegemony forces to the human resistance. Fleet positions, weapon capabilities, communication codes, and most importantly, the location of the command structure that controlled the entire empire. Major Eric Palmer coordinated the human response, using captured alien technology and the intelligence from Zachthel. He organized the most ambitious military operation in human history. They would not just defend Earth, they would attack the hegemony homeworld itself. This is insane, Palmer told his staff. We have maybe 50 ships. That can make the journey? They have thousands. Dr. Rachel Stone, the psychologist who had studied hegemony society, disagreed. Numbers do not matter if we can break their will to fight. The empire depends on fear and obedience. If we can shatter that, their military advantage becomes meaningless. The human fleet launched 3 days later. It was a mix of captured alien vessels, modified civilian ships, and hastily built warships using stolen technology. By any rational measure, it was hopelessly outmatched, but the humans did not plan to fight a rational battle. Captain Ben Taylor commanded the lead assault ship. His crew included soldiers, scientists, hackers, and even some civilians who had volunteered for the mission. They carried weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Remember, Taylor announced over the ship's communication system, we are not just fighting for Earth, we are fighting for every world the hegemony has conquered. Every species they have enslaved. Today we end their empire forever. The journey to the hegemony homeworld took 2 weeks. During that time, Zachthel used his position to feed false information to the Imperial fleet. He convinced his superiors that the humans were planning desperate attacks on isolated outposts. Most of the hegemony forces were dispatched to defend empty space while the real human fleet approached their capital. When the humans finally arrived at the hegemony homeworld, they found it protected by only a small garrison. The main fleet was scattered across the galaxy, chasing shadows, but even a small hegemony force was dangerous. The humans would have to fight with everything they had learned about warfare. Amy Foster had developed new weapons that could disrupt hegemony technology over vast distances. Alex Chun created computer viruses that could spread through enemy networks faster than they could be stopped. Dr. Katie Williams found ways to use the planet's own magnetic field against the defenders. The battle began with a coordinated assault that targeted every aspect of hegemony power simultaneously. Human ships attacked military installations while hackers disrupted communication networks. Scientists used weather control systems to create chaos on the planet's surface, while engineers sabotaged power plants and manufacturing centers. Colonel Amanda Foster led ground forces that captured key government buildings. Her troops moved like ghosts through the alien city, using stealth and surprise instead of overwhelming force. They avoided major battles and focused on seizing control of the Empire's command structure. We do not need to defeat their army, Foster explained to her officers. We need to capture their leaders and prove that the Empire can fall. The psychological effect was devastating. For thousands of years, the hegemony homeworld had been considered unconquerable. Suddenly, primitive humans were walking through their capital city and taking control of their government. Resistance collapsed faster than anyone expected. Hegemony soldiers surrendered or fled rather than fight an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The empire that had conquered dozens of worlds fell to 50 human ships in just 3 days. Zachthel watched the battle from his flagship, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. The empire he had served his entire life was ending, but perhaps something better could take its place. General Hayes contacted him as the fighting ended. Commander, what will you do now? I do not know, Zachthel admitted. The hegemony was my life. Without it, I am not sure who I am. Then learn, Hayes said simply. Come to Earth, help us figure out how to govern a galaxy without conquest and slavery. We need people who understand how the old system worked so we can build something better. Zachthel accepted her offer. He traveled to Earth and spent the following months working with human leaders to establish a new form of galactic government. Instead of conquest, it was based on cooperation. Instead of slavery, it offered freedom to all species. Dr. Kevin Wright taught him about human history and philosophy. Colonel Ryan Brooks showed him military strategies that focused on defense rather than aggression. Amanda Foster demonstrated engineering techniques that prioritized helping people instead of destroying them. War is not about being stronger than your enemy, Foster explained during one of their conversations. It is about being willing to sacrifice more for what you believe in. The hegemony fought for power and control. We fought for freedom and survival. That is why we won. Zachthel began to understand that humans had not just defeated the hegemony militarily. They had proven that there was a better way to organize galactic civilization. Their ideas about freedom, cooperation, and mutual respect were more powerful than any weapon. The new galactic alliance grew quickly as former hegemony subjects joined voluntarily. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves free to make their own decisions. Many chose to work together with humans and other species to build something better than what had come before. Years later, Zachthel reflected on how completely his understanding of war had changed. He had once believed that military strength was measured in weapons and ships and soldiers. The humans taught him that true strength came from ideas, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. I thought I knew war, he often told young officers who came to learn from him. But the humans showed me that I had only known conquest. Real war is not about defeating your enemies. It is about protecting what matters most to you. The galaxy had learned a new way to live together. It was not always peaceful, and there were still conflicts to resolve. But for the first time in thousands of years, those conflicts were solved through cooperation instead of conquest. The humans had changed everything. Not just through their military victories, but through their ideas about what civilization could become.